Despite it being half of my username, I've sort of fallen out of love with the Kirby series. I have fond memories of it from childhood, playing Superstar on the Wii U Virtual Console and watching the show on YouTube, but then I sort of just stopped keeping track of the series. Not for any reason in particular, I just wasn't as interested in it, as I made room for playing new video games. Still, I played them quite a bit, just not as much, and the only games I really had too much exposure with were Kirby's Adventure, Superstar, and Dreamland 3, so not too much with the series. This fact was shaken up when Nintendo came out with the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance Online. I got it and decided to play the first Kirby's Dream Land, the first game in the series, which is now well known for not having the copy abilities the rest of the series is known for. It was a great time, better than I had expected, and if I'm to be completely honest, I actually think it's because of a lack of copy abilities. I was shocked. Those things are Kirby's bread and butter. You know, Kirby, he inhales enemies, copies their abilities, it's what he does. It's why my channel's icon exists. But now I kind of feel like there's a problem with that mechanic, a fundamental issue, and it brings the series down. Might even be a reason why I didn't like it as much when I grew up. This is going to be a very controversial take, but I'm going to explain why I believe it. Keeping in mind that if I wasn't a YouTuber with less than 100 subscribers, I would probably get publicly executed for this. Anyways, I'm not speaking for every Kirby game here. I'm sure the copy ability system is different in like Forgotten Land and Kirby 64, for example. So for this video, this one in particular, I'm just going to be talking about Kirby's Adventure. That's the game that introduced copy abilities to the series, and is now one of the most iconic and well-known Kirby games. And who knows? The copy ability thing, it could have been done better in later entries. Maybe I'll talk about them in a future video. But this is the game I'm talking about, Kirby's Adventure. Yeah, let's make some digs at a kid's game. Seriously though, this is a video that might be a little petty, maybe a little bit. But I still think everything is fair. It's just the fact that I'm making a whole video on this little issue. It's a little twinge of pettiness. That's just a disclaimer as we get into things. So, from the start, the aim of the Kirby franchise was to provide a dynamically difficult game. For newer players, it's easy, but for older, more experienced players, you can still add more challenge yourself. The aim of the series is to be for everyone. For the most part, it's done well. Oftentimes, the series will offer little rewards for going further and challenging yourself. Doors lead to opportunities to get more health, or maybe you can fly through a dangerous pit of spikes for a water bottle that restores health. Those are really cool. Kirby can also fly over enemies, which might seem cheap at first, you just dodge everything, but it goes on to present its own risks, and his slow speed means you probably won't be doing this the entire time. So really, it adds depth to the game and makes it more of a game anyone can enjoy. Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy had this whole system down. I think it is a great example of a game both kids and adults can play. Kirby's Adventure is one of those games too. It's the one that introduced copy abilities. Kirby can suck up most enemies to gain their abilities. Bosses and enemies can be easily taken out with a fireball or a swing of the sword. And like flying, it has its own risks, but unlike flying, it's basically objectively better to have an ability than to not have one in terms of how powerful you'll be in the game. Kirby stubbing his little toe, whatever he has, does make his ability immediately fly out of him, but it's pretty easily to just suck it up again or immediately suck up another dude, possibly even the one that just hit you. I know this phrase sounds odd when applied to something like Kirby and not like Tekken or Melee, but copy abilities dominate the meta of the game. They simply get you through enemies much faster, and there's a lot less of a challenge when you're using a copy ability. In fact, you can do this. And when something like this is just so easy to do, I think it kind of presents a problem. And you know what? I think it's kind of sad, because normally bosses are great. There's a lot of tension due to how risky they are. Looking for an opening to suck up their projectiles and fire them back is what all bosses are basically about, and they're pretty fun. DDD stands out especially. He's a great time on Dreamland for Game Boy. All of his other appearances are similar, but they're much different with copy abilities, and he can kind of avoid all that tension. So really, the biggest problem is that copy abilities allow the game to be easier by avoiding the core mechanics of the game. A significant amount of the game's challenge is undercut at best or removed at worst due to copy abilities. I like when a game can let you work within the mechanics to pretty much break it. Boss skips in Metroid come to mind as a great example, but those require some knowledge of the game and reward you for practicing it well. Kirby just lets you turn into a fireball and skip half a level, which wouldn't be so bad if you're not basically using a copy ability 24/7. You're probably thinking, why don't you just not copy things? I'll get to that later, don't worry. Anyways, Kirby's Dream Land has a lot more tension than adventure due to the fact that you have to engage with each enemy, and you don't really have an easy way out with copy abilities. This is Kirby, so the enemies are generally easy, but I just find it more satisfying without copy abilities due to the higher risk. 90% of the time, an ability does not feel suited to the area it's in. It would be like if the rumors that one kid told you were true, and Super Mario Bros. Has a gun you get from beating the game 100 times and winning the secret fight against Akuma with a super move. And no, just because I mentioned Super Mario Bros., don't try to equate copy abilities with like a fire flower. I mean, copy abilities are basically power-ups, right? So what's the difference between copy abilities and a fire flower? Well, there are a few reasons, most notably the scarcity and weakness of a fire flower. In like Mario or Sonic, power-ups aren't too easy to get. There are only really a few chances to get one per level. Not every damn enemy. Kirby doesn't have the exact same system since copy abilities don't restore life, but they serve the same design necessity. So power-ups being so ubiquitous as they are in Kirby is something not really true of other platformers. The example of bosses come to mind. In Super Mario Bros., you can definitely beat Bowser, who's slightly easier with a fire flower, and having a shield against Eggman and Sonic the Hedgehog removes some tension, but they don't cancel out their attacks. You're still in dire need of avoiding what they can dish out. In Kirby's Adventure, that's technically true, but also they'd be lucky to get like 1 or 2 hits on Kirby with some of the better abilities. Okay, I've been complaining a lot, so time to acknowledge, yes, Kirby is indeed a baby game for small children. I know this, but that's not just what it is. From the start, the point of the Kirby series was to let you set your own difficulty. Harder challenges for those who seek it, and less of a harder challenge for those who don't. So the idea is that younger children avoid all the level design and pick up some copy abilities while those more experienced players don't? Yeah, that's not what happens, and it's not fun to just not use copy abilities. Sure, it's great in Dreamland, but that game feels simpler, and actually has power-ups from time to time that the game feels more built around. They're quite temporary, and it makes sense to spice up the gameplay with their implementation. In Kirby's Adventure, it can feel bland without them. There just aren't very many parts in the game besides boss fights where the design speaks for itself, and it gets really exciting, at least in my opinion, without a copy ability. It makes the game just a series of decisions on which way you would like the game to be boring. Also, it's a literal game mechanic. It shouldn't be discouraged to do a game mechanic. You should not have to do a self-imposed challenge run of a game in order to properly enjoy it. You just shouldn't. I struggle to see how Kirby's Adventure is an example of good game design for the goal of designing something for kids and adults. This is especially true when most platformers manage to do this better than them. Mario is good for kids and adults, you know? It doesn't have to completely eliminate its challenge for the younger ones. Well, I mean, except for when it did do that, but irrelevant, because I don't think it was good when it did that. Look, I've been pretty harsh on this game, but Kirby's Adventure is still a good game, and there's a reason why it's not just kids who like this series. It's fun. I enjoyed it overall despite its flaws, and copy abilities aren't just some mistake, because Kirby's Adventure occasionally does do some cool things with them that makes me wish they were implemented differently. Look at Meta Knight. It's a really fun boss fight, and is almost universally loved. That fight was built around a copy ability, the sword ability. It's not broken, because this ability doesn't do too much damage, and it was balanced very deliberately to give plenty of challenge. It's good game design. There's also the similar Nightmare, who I felt was a great final boss. Those rare moments make me wish the Kirby series had evolved differently, had the confidence to be bold, be a challenge, even if kids played them, and to actually have some fun designing around copy abilities. There are lots of ways they could have done this, so I won't go over them all here, but making enemies specifically react to an ability, making areas where you need one copy ability and can't actually lose it, or restricting abilities to be more scarce, feel like small tweaks that can improve the fundamental system on which Kirby's Adventure is based, if some other things were changed as well. It's just very frustrating that this game is held down by choices like these. It feels like an even better game is hiding, just hiding in plain sight, waiting to burst out, and it is only being chained down by Daddy Sakurai himself, who I personally hate. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't do this. How do people unironically say Daddy Sakurai? It's also almost as frustrating that this system continues in this exact way in further games. But again, I'm not speaking on those. Only Dreamland and Adventure are being discussed here, may I remind you. After releasing this video though, I will absolutely be sure to play some other games in the franchise to see if they really do continue this trend, and who knows, maybe even I'll make a video about them. Maybe even I have a script done already. I'm definitely interested in this series more now. That's going to be it for today, so thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later.